And then the transcript always lets me know how many times I say I always think I'm a polished public speaker. I don't say things like and then I listen to myself and I don't. Okay. Oh, it is doing silly things. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay. People are nodding. Okay. I will say in this session today, so we're going to be talking about the required data that we need to report. I'm not going to talk today about how to put it in the 21 APR website and those types of things. We're just going to focus on the data today. And then in the fall, I'll do my usual kind of 21 APR 101 and we'll talk about how to put it in the system. Today, we're just going to talk about collecting the data, making sure we have it all in a good spot. Okay. Oh, I hit record. Yes, I remembered. Okay. I am going to briefly remind us all of the timeline. I did have a grantee this last window to make a comment that I was behind on data collection. I am not behind on data collection. We are following the federally mandated reporting windows. If you would like to know why they are so late, my understanding is it's mostly because of Minnesota. They do not get their state assessment data until January. So they are a big reason why the windows are so late. But I will always remind everyone, you do not have to wait till the end of the window to report. This last year, window 2 opened in November and closed in March. So you are welcome to put your data in November. I would welcome it. It would make all of our lives easier. So as a reminder, we are always doing two things simultaneously. We are collecting data for the current school year, and then we are reporting data from last school year. So you'll hear me talk about sometimes today and in emails, sometimes I will reference the reporting year. Someone doesn't have their mic footage. See, there we go. Okay. I have to remember to make it auto mute you when you come in, and I forgot to change that setting. So we're always doing two things at the same time, and I know it can get confusing, especially when you're in year 5 and your grant ends, and then I'm gonna bother you in the fall and be like, hey, I still need your data, and people are saying, hey, I don't have your grant anymore, and I'm like, yes, but you still need to report it. So let's say in year 1, you just started. So in year 1 of this grant, you do not need to report your 21 APR data, but you still need to collect it. So you're collecting year A. Then the next school year, you will continue collecting for year B, and you will report year A. So this current school year that we're in, we're collecting our 24 to 25 data, but the reporting year was 23 to 24. We're always reporting a year behind. And there are two windows that we report in. Window 1 is usually in the fall. The last couple of years, it's been kind of August to October, August to November. And window 2 has been November to March. I know it's sometimes confusing when you see the website. The website will give you a different due date than what I am giving you. Always remember to go with the due date that I have given you, not what the website has given you. I put a later date in the website because once that date is passed, we cannot enter any more data. So I always give you an earlier deadline, knowing that some of you will not get it turned in on time. And I'm trying to give us the opportunity for me to bug you later and say, hey, this was late. Can we get that in? That's why the deadline's different in the website. So ignore the deadline in the website. Always go with the deadline I have given you via the newsletter or email. But if you have any questions, always feel free to confirm it with me. But that's why the deadlines don't match. And this year, I did not have to report to the feds until March 26th. And I gave you all a deadline that was a whole month earlier than that. And there was some data that still came in like the 25th of March. So that's why I give you all a very early deadline. And they might be earlier this year. Honestly, I don't see any reason why we need to wait till even February. I might just say next year the deadline is November, but I have to wait for the federal windows to come out. Any questions about the timeline so far? Hopefully that was not new to any of you and was boring because you already knew it. Okay, well, while we go, please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you have a question, you can put it in the chat and I'll try to pay attention to that.
Savannah?
Yes.
I just have a question. Can you clarify summer timelines? Because I think that can be a bit confusing too.
Yes, for sure. So summer, the reporting summer is the summer before the reporting school year. So this last year, this current school year that we are in, we reported the 23 to 24 school year and summer of 23. So this next school year, we will be tracking 25 to 26. We will be reporting the 24 to 25 school year and summer of 24. That's an excellent question, Julie. Any other questions on that? Okay. Yeah, that one's always confusing because it can go either way. But we always report the summer before the school year. Okay, so we're going to get into the data. I'm just going to go through kind of each data point individually and go over some things that I've seen that maybe were inconsistent so that we can all get on the same page. I'm probably going to update the 21 APR Utah manual this year, just with some of these small P decisions that frequently I don't know I need to make a policy around something until one of you asks me a clarifying question. I don't always think about, well, what do we do if this kid improves by this much, or what do we do in this situation? I can't think of every single situation, and frequently it's not till one of you asks me, hey, what about this? That I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's make a decision around that. So I'm always appreciative of questions, but that's also why sometimes things will change, or I will make a clarification that I had not made before because no one had asked before. So we'll start with activities. There are two things that we report in relation to activities. The first being how many participants participated in that activity category. And the second is how many hours was that activity category offered during the school year. For participants, we only count the number of unduplicated students. So I know many of you are taking attendance every single day for each activity, and that is excellent data. I will just throw out, if a student has already, let's take STEM, for example, because that's such a common one. If you, in September, you've been doing STEM almost every day, and by the end of September, every single student has participated in STEM, you can stop counting at that point. Like, because every kid only needs to be counted once they're counted, you don't have to count them anymore. Now, if it is easier for your processes to just keep it consistent and always track every single kid in every single activity, then I would say please go ahead and keep doing that. I do think that's useful data for you. But for the purposes of 21 APR, you don't necessarily need to count every single kid every single day if they already participated in that category offering. You should be tracking it daily. Looking at, hey, I've got 20 kids on my roster today. Have all 20 of these kids participated before? If they all have, you can count them, you cannot, but if they haven't, then they need to be counted. You should be every single activity noting if there's anyone that still needs to be counted. For activity hours, each activity can only count toward one category. So if I always feel like cooking's a good example of one that can go in many different categories. My rule of thumb is always to go based off of the learning objective. Every activity you offer should have a very clear learning objective for your students. We should never have an activity that does not have a clear learning objective. So if we're cooking, sometimes you might have the learning objective of teamwork and organizations, or today we're going to learn how to follow instructions, sequenced instructions. Or it might be that we're cooking and we're talking about nutrition and how to make a well-rounded, nutritious meal. That might go into healthy and active lifestyle. Or it might be that we're cooking, but the goal of our cooking activity is actually to practice our fractions and a half a cup and a 3/4 cup. So maybe this cooking activity is going to go under STEM because our learning objective is math-based. So I'll skip ahead a slide so that we can talk about this. So a few activity categories are obviously used more than others. Because if we're going based on what the learning objective is, what the goal of the activity is, there are some of these that you'll probably almost never use. Like activities for English language learners, for example. Many of us have students who are English language learners, but they're usually integrated into the rest of the activities. So that's not necessarily the main goal of the activity. Similar for services with students, for students with disabilities. They're usually integrated into the rest of the activities with the rest of the students. And we're not usually providing an activity where the main purpose of the activity is a service for a student with disabilities. So you should never be counting an activity twice. Now, if you cook every single week, like I said, I'm not going to tell you if you cook every single week that should always be under STEM. It might be that this week we're cooking and I put it under healthy and active lifestyle, but next week it goes under STEM. And next week it goes under cultural programs because we're going to talk about a country and a different culture and food from there. That's up to you. Let's see, can I go backwards? Yes. I would say also, and this counts for attendance as well, we count them in hours. Probably a lot of your activities last an hour, but maybe they're only like 45 minutes or half an hour. If that's the case, then you should count 45 minutes or half an hour. I usually would say round to the nearest quarter hour. If your activity is 25 minutes, you can count it toward half an hour. We don't necessarily need to count to the minute. If your software will count to the minute, then that's excellent. We want to be as accurate as possible while still being reasonable. I don't want to have to make you count that we started this activity at 4:03 and we ended at 4:59. So that is 56 minutes. If you want to be that accurate, I will welcome it, but I will not force it. So count round to the nearest quarter hour, and then you'll add all those at the end of the year. Now, one thing I do not want to see that's not ideal is calculating and guesstimating instead of actually tracking. Sometimes people will say, well, on our schedule that we made at the beginning of the year, we planned on doing a literacy activity for half an hour every single day. So I'm just going to go, we had 170 days of program times half an hour is, what is that, 80 hours, 85 hours. We don't want to just calculate it at the end. We want to actually track it, because when you go at the end of the year and just say, well, our schedule said we did a half hour of literacy every day when we made it at the beginning of the year, that doesn't include, well, this day we actually we ended up taking a field trip instead of our regular schedule, or we had a snow day and didn't end up making that up in after school hours, or we had a guest speaker come. We did a career day, and so we shifted around our schedule a little bit and only did 15 minutes of literacy that day, or we didn't do it at all. Or our school had we had a literacy week and we were really focused on literacy, and we took that into the after school program. So we did an hour of literacy every day during that week. We want to actually track it during the school year as we're going along and then just total it, and we don't want to just go back and make guesses based on a calendar and a schedule we made at the beginning of the year. Does that all make sense? Are there any questions on that? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I will say, I'm also welcome to feedback on your feelings about these categories. Nationwide, there's a lot of feelings about these categories because they're not, academic enrichment. Like, what does that really mean? If we do literacy, do we put it under literacy or do we put it under academic enrichment? Because that really is kind of the same thing. I don't fully have an answer, but I'm open to suggestions and thoughts on the matter. For example, I heard recently in Alaska, their state just made the decision that they only use 6 out of these 15 categories. It's like STEM, literacy, health and active life. Like, they don't use well-rounded education activities, including credit recovery. They just put that under academic enrichment. Or like telecommunications and technology education. In my mind, why do we even have that category? That should just be under STEM. So I'm not ready to tell you stop using certain categories, but be wise about it. And I welcome any feedback or thoughts on the matter. Okay, so we'll move to staffing. This one is hopefully the easiest. I always, with the caveat that I have never had to collect this data myself. I have never been a 21st century grantee and collected all of this. So I'm making the assumption that hopefully staffing is the easiest and simplest one. I get the fewest questions about it. We are putting in the number of staff and volunteers in each category. I didn't write out the categories here. But this all lives, I should have put the link in the chat. All of this information lives in the 21st Century Google Drive in the 21 APR folder. There's one called, I think, Information and Guides. You can see all of the reference documents from myself, Camille, as well as the U.S. Department of Education. So that will list out all of the staffing categories for you that I did not put in this PowerPoint. One question I got, administration, that's where the site coordinator should go. Site coordinators go under administration. This one, hopefully you're just collecting when you onboard people and then storing that somewhere. I always suggest that even if you are a person that likes paper, you like to do things on paper, all of your information should get digitized eventually, hopefully soon. With activities, let me go back to activities for a second. If this is easier for you, in the moment, your site coordinators, your staff, they're running program, they've got a bunch of kids running around, they don't have a tablet or you don't have a laptop for every single group, and it's really difficult to track this digitally in the moment, that is completely fine. If you have created a system for them to take attendance and track activities on paper, I'm standing up here, I'm giving directions, I'm taking attendance while I'm doing it, that's completely fine. But I would say at a minimum, you should be digitizing that every week. Ideally, I would say it's getting digitized maybe every day at the end of the day after the kids go home, one staff can take 10 to 20 minutes to input it all digitally so that it is safe, it doesn't get lost. But I would say at a minimum weekly, any physical papers should be getting digitized so that we can keep track of them. So same with staffing. If you have this written somewhere on like a form they fill out, digitize it at some point. Okay, participation. This one can get tricky depending on how we're doing it. So participation, we need to report in aggregate level, their grade level, their program attendance hours. So this is not their like school day attendance. This is their attendance in your program. Separated by summer and school year. So all of this we're reporting twice. We report it once for summer and once for school year. So their hour bands, once again, rounded to the nearest quarter. If you don't have a software that will just track it to the minute, then the nearest quarter hour. Their race, ethnicity, and their sex. So their grade level, their race and ethnicity, and their sex. I always suggest put that in your registration form so that you just have it in the registration form. You don't need to go to the school. We don't even need to involve FERPA and all of that stuff for this portion. Just get it from their parent on their registration form. So we're going to report this in aggregate level, but you should make sure you're keeping track of it all at an individual level, because we need those students in their hour bands when we get to our outcomes data. So make sure you're not only storing it in the aggregate level, that you keep it stored at the individual level. We're also reporting the number of students that are English language learners at each site, the number of students that are economically disadvantaged, the number of students with disabilities, and the number of family members served. This one is the only one in this entire data set that is around family engagement. So when we do a family engagement activity, we should be keeping track of how many people attend that so that we can report that later on. And those are all unduplicated numbers. Okay. So participation, we already talked about collecting that in the registration form from parents. Their hour band, like I said, should not be rounded more than a quarter hour. So a rounding error might end up moving a kid from one hour band to the next, especially because the hour bands are not consistent. Like the first hour band, 0 to 15 hours, and then the next hour band is 16 to 44. And that's only a 15-hour difference. And then suddenly there's 16 hours and like 170 hours difference in the hour bands. But if you notice that your rounding error is moving students like multiple hour bands, then we should have a conversation, have a look at how that's calculated and the math. Because of the difference between a kid attending 45 minutes every day versus like 60 minutes over 180 days, that's 15 minutes times 180 days, is not that many hours. So just make sure that you're doing it consistently. If you want me to like look over your formula and make sure that it's right, I will happily do that. Really any of this, if you would like me to look at your spreadsheet with you and see that this all makes sense, I'm happy to do that. Okay. Any questions about participation? Parent consent forms. So, like we said, most of the participation data, we're just going to get straight off their registration form, but we still need to have parent consent forms to be able to use that student's data in 21 APR. So whether or not we're getting data from a school, we cannot put a student into 21 APR without a consent form from a parent. a lot of you I know have it attached to the registration form. I think that's an excellent practice. And I know it looks a little different if you're a CBO versus an LEA, but here are the 3 things that your data consent form must have. And this is what I was told by our state assistant attorney general and our USBE student privacy data coordinator. Okay, Demonia, I'll get to your question in just a moment. So the 3 things your data consent form must have: what data is being collected about each student, who will have access to that data. So if you want to put a student in 21 APR, you should say that this is going to the U.S. Department of Education and the Utah State Board of Education. Although I will say, maybe you don't need to put the U.S. Department of Education because we're only reporting it in aggregate levels. So maybe you don't need to put the U.S. Department of Education, but I would probably still put USBE just because I will be, who knows what else I might be asking for. So who will have access to it? You know, do you have any other stakeholders, committees, partnerships that might have access to that student level data? And then how is the data being used? So the data is going to be used for program evaluation. I am not yet requiring it, but I probably will require eventually that you use the UAN data student template because I know that it meets all 3 of these criteria if it's filled out correctly. But the number 1 reason that I am highly suggesting it to you to start using right now is 1, it has been reviewed and approved by our state assistant attorney general and the USBE data privacy specialist. And the USBE data privacy team took it to a meeting of all of the state LEA data privacy specialists from every single district and showed it to them and said, this is from the Utah After School Network. It's used for out of school time. We have looked at this and reviewed it and approved it. So hopefully if you're a CBO and you need data from a school district and you have that signed by a parent, then that should be fine. I know we've had some situations where even with a data privacy consent form signed that some LEAs have still said no. And it probably is because I know from reviewing them that some of your forms did not meet this criteria. Because I will say I did not know there was formal criteria until a couple months ago. So any questions about data consent forms and parent forms? Okay. I'm going to go back. Someone had a question about participation and attendance.
Yes, sorry, you moved faster than I thought. Okay.
No problem.
My question is because you didn't go over it, the section when it's asking about family members or parents' attendance. Can you clarify like who are we counting on that? Because like we have like family nights, we also have like ESL classes for some of the parents. Like what is the numbers that we put in that section? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like who are we really tracking as far as adults?
I would say if they are any family member of your student, if they're a parent, a sibling, a aunt or uncle, if they're a family member and they're a member of your community coming to an event that you're holding, then you can count them. Does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah. So we have a system that that tracks that. But any adult programming that the parents and the family members, parents of the kids we serve, those numbers can be put in that, can be reported. I just want to clarify. So yeah, that answers my question. If it is
an activity or a service you're providing with 21st century dollars, then yeah, count it. The U.S. Department of Education is wanting to know like how many community members are being served through this program through 21st Century. So if you're using 21st Century dollars to pay for an activity or English classes, parenting classes, because those are part of your 21st Century community, then that can count. If it is an activity you're paying for with other dollars, because I know some of our larger organizations have a lot of different programs going on. If it's being paid for with like other dollars, then I would say we should not be counting that. But I just want to double check so the actual wording in 21 APR is just family members of participants served. So I would take the term family broadly. If they're an aunt or uncle, if it's anyone that this kid says this is part of my family, then we can count them. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yep. Any other questions about participation or anything we've gone over so far? Okay. Okay, then I will get that. Okay. Oh, I didn't put it in here, but this parent consent form can be found on the Utah After School Network website. I will try and remember to put it in the May newsletter to remind us all. So I will say, if you do not already have a parent consent form that meets these 3 criteria, it might be worth sending around another form right now before the school year is over. Since we won't report it till the fall, you might have a whole different batch of kids come fall. Not all the kids are going to be the same. So it might be worth reviewing that at your level and maybe sending around this form and getting it signed before the school year is over, so that you know for your 24 to 25 kids, we have these signed. For summer of 24, some of us might just kind of be out of luck if we did not get one signed. But if you can still find that kid and get it signed, that would be great. Okay. So we'll move on to the GEPRA. So window 1 in the fall, we report activities, staffing, and participation. I remember it because those are ASP, and sometimes we use ASP as the acronym for after school program, and sometimes it also means staffing, activities, and participation. If you need a little mnemonic device to remember those. So that we report in the fall in window 1. Then in window 2, we report our outcomes, our GEPRA. I don't remember, it's like government performance record something. I don't remember what GEPRA stands for, but there are a lot of federal programs that use the term GEPRA. So the first one we report is state assessments. Not all of the GEPRA need to be collected for every single student you have. So for example, state assessments, we are only doing students in grades 4 through 8. So if you've got an elementary school, you're K through 6, you don't need to worry about your K through 3 kids. Now I will say, you don't need to worry about them, but we report state assessment 4 out of the 5 GEPRA. We report as a comparison from the prior year to the current reporting year. So right now, we're collecting data for the 24 to 25 school year. Hopefully, last year you already collected state assessment for the 23 to 24 school year. So you can use that data you already collected to compare it for this year. So although you do not need to report 3rd graders, it might be worth pulling 3rd graders into your report so that you have it for next year. You'll have it for next year, because next year that kid, or really 2 years from now, next year that kid will be a 4th grader. So you'll report them in the 27 to 28 school year. So we're thinking 2 years ahead here in terms of data collection. You might not need to. If you have an easy way to pull all of this data, it might not be worth it to you to pull a third grader's data. I'm just providing you with options. The number one thing I get questions about is what test are we using? We use the RISE test. We do not use Acadience only because it is not required that every school do Acadience past, I think, 3rd grade. So not every school has Acadience data to pull. RISE scores, we know everyone should have them. And we go based off of the scale score. That is debated. I think there are a lot of different ways we could do this that all have value. That is the way I've chosen to do it for now until someone convinces me that another way is better. We need to collect and report both language arts and math. So for this GEPRA, you're actually going to have 2 separate things that you're reporting. It will ask you the number of students for whom you have data, and then of those students who actually improved. So if you don't have data for all of your kids, then it will take into account. So if you've got 60 kids and you only have data for 30 of them and only 20 improved, then the program should say you had 66% improving instead of saying that you only had 33% improving. So they're giving us credit for not always having data. It's at least not making our data look bad that we don't have it. If there is, for all of the GEPRA, if there is a hour band or a GEPRA that you do not have data for, just put a 0. I didn't make a slide for this because I wasn't planning on talking about putting it in, but I want to mention it while you're all here. I've never formally said this to most of you, so you probably don't know, that we should never be clicking the button that says no data to report. I know it's really confusing because it feels like I don't have data. I should just click that button. But if you don't have data, just put 0s for everything. The no data to report button should only be clicked if I have told you to do that for a state level consistent reason. Like if in our state, it is statewide mandated that we do not do in-school suspension, then we could click no data to report. Or if suddenly there's another pandemic or a natural disaster and we just didn't do state assessment one year, then I would tell you click no data to report. So I actually went through this year and unclicked that for a couple of you and put in the 0s because I didn't want to make you do it. As a side note, any questions about state assessment? Okay. And I will talk briefly at the end about having the option of USBE collecting all of this data. I know for many of the LEAs, it's easy peasy. For some of the CBOs, it's more difficult to get things like state assessment data, so I'm happy to do that for you. Even if you are an LEA, I would encourage you to consider having the USBE team collect your GEPRA data, because we lose some students who move from district to district because we are comparing the prior year to the reporting year. If a student moved districts in between those years, many times even the LEAs say we can't report this student because we don't have the prior year data. At USBE, we do have the prior year data. So even if you are an LEA, I would think about if it would be handy for you to have USBE collect your data. Okay, GPA. The federal guideline is that we only report students in grades 7 through 8 and 10 through 12 because there's a lot of inconsistency around 9th grade. I just recently decided that I'm no longer going to make anyone report 7 through 8 either, because as a state, we do not have a consistent way of measuring GPA in grades 7 through 8. We're fairly consistent across grades 9 through 10 or 9 through 12. because those are required for graduation. But across middle schools and junior highs in our state, 7 through 8, there's a lot of different stuff going on, and our numbers are not always consistent. We don't always really measure it the same way. So if it is easier for you to not report 7 through 8, then go ahead and don't do it. Just do 10 through 12. And you can, when it comes time to put it in, you'll put that in the narrative box that Savannah told me not to report 7 through 8. So if you're a middle school, that might then be a whole GEPRA box that you don't need to fill out anymore. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I just saw some mutes flashing on and off. The other thing to remember is that we're only reporting students who had below a 3.0 average in the prior year. So right now, if we are going to pull GPAs for a bunch of our students, we're going to, I would say first, look at their 24, 25, 23, 24. Okay, we're going to look at their 23 to 24 GPA. Note which students have a 3.0 or below, and then you only need to pull those students. So you don't need to pull every single student. Now, if you want to use this data for your own means and your own evaluation, go ahead and pull all of them. Or if you want to pull everyone's 24 and 25 in preparation for reporting 25 to 26, because 24 to 25 will be the prior year, go right ahead. But the system's going to ask you how many students had below a 3.0. You'll put in that number, and then it will ask you of those students, how many improved, and you'll put in that number. Okay. And I will say I am pretty liberal with the definition of improvement in all of this. I don't have any specific definition of what counts as improvement in GPA. So I can't remember exactly what the manual says, but if it's even like a 100th of an improvement, it's not a meaningful improvement, maybe not. So maybe I'll make a definition eventually, but for now, just count them. Attendance, this is the biggest one. This is the only one where we are counting grades 1 through 12. And I should have said at the beginning, I'm going to say it now. We still report all of this except attendance for all of these summer students. So if you have a student that attended your summer program and did not attend your school year after school program, they still get counted in all of your summer data, and you still need this school year GEPRA data because we're trying to show, did attending summer still help this kid during the school year improve their GPA? Did it mitigate summer learning loss? Did it help improve their end of year state assessment because we mitigated summer learning loss? So that's why you still report them and these school year outcomes, even if they're only a summer attendee. I know I've had some questions about that. Attendance is the only one where we're not reporting it for school year students. So we're only reporting students below 90% in the previous year. So once again, I would start by pulling the previous year's attendance if you don't have it from last year. Hope you might already have it just sitting somewhere from last year. Pull the 23 to 24 school year. Identify which students were below 90%. Then out of those students, you're going to identify who improved their attendance for 24 to 25. And only for school year students. Any questions about attendance? And this one is school day attendance. We're not talking after school program attendance. This is the school day attendance. Okay, behavior. This is one that gets confusing. So this is measured through number of in-school suspensions. We are not doing like hours or anything like that, just did they have an instance of in-school suspension? Even for summer students. So once again, if you have a summer student that's not in your school year, we're not talking about in-school suspension during the summer. We are talking about school year in-school suspension. We're trying to figure out, does participation in summer programming impact a student's behavior? You know, are there any preventative factors that are there? So we're comparing the prior year to the previous year. So we're going to compare 23 to 24 to 24 to 25. If your school had none, once again, do not click no data to report. You're going to just input a bunch of zeros. If your school uses it so sparingly that you only had like one kid that even had an in-school suspension in the prior year, then put that one kid. Let's see. Jana, I would, if we have a way of collecting the RISE scale scores for your students, then I would want us to try and do that. If you have no way of doing that, then we, I guess, can keep going with Acadience if it's not an option. But if I would like to at least try and get those state assessments, because if we can get it for both years, then we'll still have an accurate depiction of who improved. But feel free to email me after, Jana, and we can talk about it more if you have more questions. Okay, any questions about behavior? This one, a lot of people do just report zeros because a lot of schools don't do it. And with all of this, we can add in the narrative box on the 21APR website that our schools don't use ISS, or they use it as an absolute last resort. So we have very sparing, you know, we use it very sparingly, whatever it is. Okay, then engagement and learning. This is the number one thing to get done right now before the end of the school year is teacher surveys. The rest of the data I can pull, we can go back and pull it later. Teacher surveys, we can't do it very easily. Go back and just do this later. So we should get it done right now. I will say I have no requirement of how late in the school year you wait to do it. So if you've already done it, totally great. If you want to wait till the end, the very last day of school, I would say that that is pretty risky. You don't have to wait till like the last week of school. If you want to start doing these, I would say like 1st of April. If you've already started, that's completely fine. So this survey is very simple. It asks if students have improved their engagement and learning in the classroom this year. And we really just need the teacher to check like strongly agree, disagree. It's just a quick checkbox. There is a version of this on the USBE website and in the Google Drive that you can download, and you're welcome to use that. Now, I will say you do need to ask the right question, but you can reformat that however works for you. So if you would like to create a Google form, like a digital Google form, you are welcome to do that. If you want to do it on paper, you can do that. I've also seen where people created a list, like a roster, so that all of the students, if I have Mrs. Smith teaches 3rd grade and 5 kids in her classroom attend my after school program, you are more than welcome to take all 5 of Mrs. Smith's kids, write them out on the same piece of paper or Google Doc or in a spreadsheet. I think was it Provo? Someone had a really awesome spreadsheet they use. So they just make a tab for each teacher and list their students that attend the after school program. So the teacher can just go check all of their students all at once and not have to deal with 5 different pieces of paper or 5 different forms. I'm giving you a lot of freedom in how you get this done, as long as you can do it accurately. Obviously, we don't want anyone we don't want data getting mixed up. So if you want any help making any sort of template for that, like, please let me know. Once again, if you are doing it on paper, completely fine, but please digitize it soon. I met with a poor site coordinator not this last fall, but the fall before. She was brand new, had just started in September, was getting an email from her boss about, hey, we have 21 APR data due, and she had no idea what anyone was talking about. And then when I met with her and we tried to go over all the data, she was like, I don't think it's anywhere in this computer. I don't see a file. She did, after a couple of days of digging around her office, find a folder labeled 21 APR that had all the students' like physical copies in it of the teacher survey, and like a paper copy of some attendance sheet. And she had to figure out how to, like, what any of this meant. And how to get that in a way that can be reported in 21 APR. So if you do it on paper, that is completely fine with me, but please digitize it soon so that we have a lot of turnover in our field. Some of you might not be here next year. Your site coordinators might not be here next year when it comes time to report. Get it saved in a manner that is easy to access, that is easy to understand, so that we're all set up for success. I have heard from a couple other states some other ways that they do this, or think you obviously I would I think if you want to go to what grades is behavior? Behavior is, I don't remember off the top of my head. That one might also be 1 through 12. I don't remember. I will get back to you. We're almost done, Cassandra, and I will look it up when we're done and let you know what grades behavior is. So for the teacher survey, if you want to just go to staff meeting when all the teachers are in the same room and say, hey, here's these surveys, hand them out. Just take them right now before you even leave the room. I'll collect them at the door. So you get them all done in one day. That's fine. You want to send them in an email. You want to put them in a teacher's like little mailbox. I did hear from a state that they really encourage working together with your school's PTA to maybe provide some sort of incentive. You are not allowed to use 21st century dollars to provide an incentive for teachers, but your PTA is. So they said, they're like, we really encourage people to get together with the PTA. The PTA provides maybe it's a $10 swig gift card or some candy bars or like whatever it is to the first teacher that gets all their surveys turned in. Through a lot of, collaboration, alignment, we maybe can find some creative solutions to motivate teachers to help us out and get this data in, because we all know school day teachers have a lot of other things going on. I don't want to make anyone's life more difficult, but we do need to get this done. Any questions about teacher surveys and engagement in learning? Okay. Then really quick, I'm just going to put in a little bit of a plug for having me collect your data. We tried it this year with some guinea pigs, and there was a little bit of back and forth because of some misunderstandings on both parts of what data was needed and where and what in which form, but I learned a lot, and I think I will have a much better system for this next year. I think it will go very smoothly and very easy. So if you want me to collect your Window 2 GEPRA data and you're not using Salesforce, then I will be sending out a copy of a revised, new and fresh copy of the student data template. You'll need to fill out that template with all of the identifying student data, and I'm probably going to have it due by the end of June. Even though I won't actually need it till the fall, I want you to get it to me by the end of June so that I have it. We are ready to go. We are not rushing or cramming come reporting season. So you'll see that in the main newsletter. If you're in Salesforce and your Salesforce is up to date and accurate with your students and their participation data, then you won't even need to give me the student data template. You can just let me know you want me to pull it, and I will pull your student data from there and give it to our USB data and statistics team who actually pull the Gepper data. So if you want me to pull your Window 2 data, I'm also happy to input it myself so that you do not have to input it into 21 APR. And I'm also happy to have conversations about me doing Window 1. If you are in Salesforce, I am happy to do your Window 1 data for you because it's easy for me to pull it. If you are not in Salesforce and you want me to input your Window 1 data, I am happy to have that conversation, but we'll just need to figure out a easy way for you to get me your Window 1 data because I don't already have access to it. Any questions about having me collect and or input your data? Okay, well, that is all I have for you, unless you want to stick around while I double check what grades behavior is. But I hope you all have a wonderful day. Next week, May 7th, I'm holding another webinar on data and evaluation. So we're not going to be talking 21 APR. We're really going to get into the basics of like, how do I conduct an evaluation? What is the purpose of an evaluation? How do I write that in a report? What is required for the year 3 evaluation? And we'll get into the nitty-gritty of data and things like that. So if you'd like to come next week, you are welcome to. If you are unable, I will try and record that one as well. And then, okay, real quick, that's participation. If my computer will load, we will get to, I went too far. Let me just, nope, okay, 1 second, and I will get the behavior grades. I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, see, I was wrong. Behavior grades are for grades 1 through 12. So attendance and behavior are for everyone. I was wrong when I said about attendance. Any other questions before people go? Okay, well, thank you all. Have a wonderful day.